I kind of like to know kind of who everybody is and where they're at first before we get started. Obviously, we're all, we're going to keep it super focused to basketball because that's what we the SIG group was about. But just real fast, just introduce who you are, where you're at, and then we'll kind of jump on the first topic. I'm John Delph. I'm the head strength and conditioning coach at Piedmont University. For those of you guys who do not know me.
Hi everybody. Sorry for hopping on late, getting ready for fall camp and all that. I'm Caleb Allen. I'm the head strength coach at Texas A&M Kingsville, down here in the Lone Star Division 2.
Yeah, I'm Aaron Abraham. I'm a graduate assistant at Millersville University in Pennsylvania.
I'm Vic Salcedo. I am the Director of Sports Performance for women's basketball at VCU.
I'm Andrew Butler. I'm the Assistant Director of Sports Performance at St. Francis University. I work with men's women's basketball, men's women's volleyball.
I'm Brent Morris, Assistant Director of Strength and Conditioning at USC Upstate, with women's basketball, men's soccer, and softball.
I'm Andrew Monty. I'm here at Presbyterian College, currently the interim director, but was the assistant. We work with all 19 sports here.
Glenn Rivera, assistant director, Pepperdine University, women's basketball, women's tennis, water polo.
I do know there's some people on their phones too, so they're probably just listening into the car, and that's fine. So this is going to be just super open. I know there were a couple things that I kind of wanted to pick y'all's brains as far as basketball specific stuff goes, and then I'm sure everybody has their own thing too that they'd like to ask, so we'll just kind of jump that down the line. But my first one is have you guys seen anything that you like as far as like conditioning type tests or anything like that coming back from the summertime that you actually get some useful information on, rather than, we're going to hit some 17s or something like that?
I've used the beep test, just a level 1 beep test. How I get buy-in, well, one, it's pretty basketball specific. You're going up and down the court, you're resting, you're doing that multiple times for as long as you can. And the WNBA uses it, and a lot of international teams like U23, 24 leagues use it, which if a lot of kids want to go pro, that's kind of what they will go to. If they don't get picked up by the draft, they'll go overseas. So I use a level 1 beep test. Scores vary based off of positions, and it beats having to do 2022 17s, the mile. I've also played around with a little bit of like a mass almost, but it's like 15 on, 15 off, trying to accumulate mileage. So doing it like a baseline, and then doing it for heart rate intensity, and then just doing it as a conditioner, depending like what you're looking for. Those are the two big ones I've used. I just try to limit as much change of direction as possible, and as much damage to their mentality as possible.
Yeah, I use the yo-yo. Currently, I use the yo-yo intermittent level 1. It's one of those tests from a distance perspective that doesn't change, but sometimes I actually like to run it outside on our turf and get off of the hardwood. That way they're still running it, and obviously like the scores are going to change, and that's fine. But it's almost like a tool for us to use during conditioning days too. Because I know our kids, and I tell our kids in advance, like, hey, we're gonna, Thursday's our conditioning day. Normally, instead of, running the hill today, we're going to run the yo-yo test. I want them to have that, but I kind of want them to stress a little bit, but I want them to know about it so they can prepare their bodies for it. That can kind of help them low stakes, have that same mentality once we actually start playing games, to kind of have that ability to overcome.
I've also actually today we just tested the yo-yo level 1. But also with that, we tested heart rate recovery. So after they got done with their, they bailed out with the yo-yo, they went and found the coach, got their heart rate right after their run. 2 minutes later, took their heart rate again just to see how well they recovered within those 2 minutes. I've thought about using a mass type workout with them, but I'm not sure about the distances, given that basketball courts are about 30 meters long. So I don't know how I would use mass, because we don't have a field anywhere close to our facility to be able to go outside, run a 15-second run, 15-second run type of conditioning or endurance workout with them. So I'm still trying to figure out how to maybe adapt that to my space.
Yeah, I haven't thought about using the heart rate recovery though, but I think that's something that, again, that doesn't require any like special equipment for. I mean, obviously I'm sure that technology's out there, just using heart rate monitors and stuff, but that's something that doesn't, and that's something that I always have struggled with, is there's a lot of things out there that I'd love to be able to do, but like if I don't have heart rate monitors, I don't have, timing gates, I don't have this, I don't have that, being at a smaller school, I still want to give, like, I don't want to have that be an excuse for our kids. So I think that's a really good takeaway that is free, basically.
Yeah. I think pending also like pending what also you have available and like what kind of money you have, I think you can also do it based off of like breaths, being able to actually do like a box breathing, and having them like count their breaths and see how long they can hold, how long they can blow out, being able to have more time that you're holding and expiring is going to give you also a better like recovery rate, like you said. If you can't do heart rates or like you don't have the manpower or things like that. I mean, we have Fuller here. We're fortunate that we do have it. So like that's not really an issue for us.
Any other different types of conditioning tests that you guys use out there currently? I've played around a little bit, because with some of my field sports, we utilize the tribe test, which is something that Kier, rugby strength coach, kind of put out a long time ago. And I tried to with a buddy of mine. His name's Trey Kilgore at Samford University. We've talked a little bit about trying to adapt that for basketball. And he did run it a little bit, and liked some of the information we got, because he was able to get the type of conditioning that he needed for each of those. Do they need more anaerobic type conditioning or aerobic type conditioning? So that was something that was super useful. But at the same time, when he ran it he ran it a couple times, and he noticed there was still a little bit of some kinks to work out. So I'm kind of helping him with that a little bit to try to figure out a better way, because I do like that tangible, not just pass fail that we get from the yo-yo test too. So that's something I'm trying to work around.
So like not to get into the nitty gritty though, but like that's part of the issue I'm having. Like one, I think the style of play is going to dictate your conditioning, or should dictate your conditioning. If you're a transition team, you need to understand that or a full court press team, you need to understand your running demands are going to be a lot higher, versus a team that's going to be slow pace. They're going to set plays. They're probably going to stay on the perimeter. They're going to be shooters. They might not drive much, or just one bucket to the post. Like know your plays. And I think that's kind of where we need to integrate better with the sport coaches to understand what they want. So when they're seeing like, hey, we're out of shape, it's like, well, technically we're in shape. We're just not in the shape of playing that we need to be. And some can argue, well, that's what, playing basketball is going to do. But at the same point, yes, but they need to know what that feels like prior to when they first do that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and again, I think that's a big part of coming in. Like when I was a first like my first GA, I was like, well, this is what the textbook told me, or this is what I did, so this is what we have to do. And then as I've gotten further into the field, I've realized more that I've become much more of a support type person, as far as, okay, let me go out and watch how they practice and how their games are, and watch film on them and see how they that kind of stuff works. Because, I might think that, basketball players should do this because when I was a basketball player, that's what we did. But, we run a 2-1-2 zone, and that's a lot different than what I did when I was in college, where we 3-quarter trapped. So like, there's a lot of differences that, I had to learn. And I think that's something as a really good young strength coach can do. And the best strength coaches around can adapt what the knowledge that they have for how their team is, because that's where wins and losses come from. And I think that's a lot of times where people complain about, oh, I don't think our jobs should be tied to wins and losses. Well, if we're doing our jobs right, the wins and losses should take care of themselves. In my opinion, every place I've ever been, there's been things where I have no control over from a culture standpoint that, I can't match. And a lot of times those losses stem from something like that. So.
No, I agree. And I know it's tougher with like when you have multiple teams, like it's really hard to get to practice. Fortunately for myself, like I just have women's basketball. So when we're at practice, and this is kind of why I asked the question like athlete monitoring systems and conditioning and things like that, because we're at practice and I'm talking to the coach, like, Coach, I need this to be a low day. And she's like, cool, position work. But she doesn't realize that position work, an athlete just went from getting, I don't know how many shots a game, maybe 20, 30 shots a game, to 20, 30 shots in 3 minutes for 6 minutes straight. So understanding the demands placed on each breakdown that we're doing, like, because you need to understand how a coach sees something. They see a position work very low, but if you look at the training loads and demands that match it, it's actually high, and it's inverse of what we're looking for. So that's why I have the questions of like, how do you guys monitor it? It's nice to say, yeah, today's a high day, and it's look at practice and then have practice fit your high day. Sure. Like, was this really a high day? Like, how are we loading and looking at that? And is it correlating to what the coaches think, to what the athletes feel, to what we should be doing?
Yeah, and I think that's the hard part for what we do, and that's where when my mind shifted to the support side of things. I actually got something from Cody Hughes, who's a high school strength and conditioning coach in Alabama. He's got this really cool stoplight system that he uses that I've kind of adopted as well. So obviously, like, yes, we have days that are in mind for us. And if we have really good relationships with our coaches, then we try to, that tends to happen maybe a little bit easier. Or there's other times where they're not paying attention in practice, and then that low day now became a high day because they're running 17s. So having easy ways to kind of quickly, especially if you're training post practice, having those easy like stoplights, or it's like, okay, today was supposed to be a high day, but because of the things that happened at practice, maybe now we're on a yellow light. So the way that his system works is green light's obviously full go, yellow light, you drop this just one set off of the set of, so if you have 4 sets, then you have just 3 sets or whatever it is. And then if it's a red light, which he does for his game days, same setup, take a set off to limit the volume, but then he also takes away any sort of tempo that he would normally want. He takes that tempo away. So if it's supposed to be back squat, 4 sets of 5, it's now a red day with a 5-second eccentric. It's now going to be 3 sets of 5 with no tempo. He works with high school athletes. That's where he kind of came from. So he doesn't obviously have like he might only have them Tuesdays and Thursdays, and they play a basketball game on a Thursday. He doesn't want them to be off. So that stoplight system helped. But that was something that I kind of thought about too, because I'm always the reactionary one when it comes to training. And that's something that I've seen some success with. Like, let the coaches, especially when you're building relationships, let them do what they do, try to learn what they do. And then, down the road, couple years down the road, what that system is and you can program based on it. but I'm always the reactionary one. So when the guys come in and, you know, hey, we just did some shell work today, and it's like, cool, I know based on the day of week, like I want to get after it today, we can. Or hey, we ran 17s today. It's like, okay, well, maybe need to back off a little bit. And I'm not being soft because of that, but that's my athlete management system.
Yeah.
Another thing that we could do is just have RPEs, a simple way, have the athletes rank for the weight session and then rank the practice session and then compare the two, because if we're trying to go off a high-low model, we want to kind of pair the days with the practice. So if we can get that data, like, hey, here's my session, it was a 6 out of 10. Your session, they said it was a 9 out of 10. It's kind of getting there, but we could drop down the intensity of practice a little bit, try to meet at that 7 or 8 level. Or if you have a low day, the intensity was like a 3 in the weight room or whatever, and their practice session was still pretty high, you can have that conversation with the coach. A big part of that is coach education, making sure the coaches know what a low day and a high day is. So here are certain fundamental low speed tactical drills. These are considered low days, what we need to focus on. It's up to you as the sport coach to plan your practice how you want, but here's like a periodized practice plan that you can follow that will help make our athletes motivated over time.
Yeah, no, we use RPs too, which I think the athletes are getting better at, like learning how to monitor. I mean, we had a freshman come in and every day was a 10 for her. You know, like that's all she knew because this was her first day, it's her first year, like acclimating to a 45-minute practice. Small groups are going up and down on the court. Like soon that eventually turned to what, you know, the average was for the group. But I think with that too, so when I track polar, like I'm able to put in certain, like whatever our practice is, we have whatever it's called for the breakdowns. I'll put it in there so I know each segment and what we're doing. And it'll be interesting because I'll never tell a coach, hey, this is what practice should look like. I'll just be like, hey, this is what we can't do, because I think it's easier to say what we can't do versus what we can do. Coaches don't like to be told what to do, which is fair. It's their team. I'll never be like, coach, you need to do this. It's more just like, here's an umbrella and like, this is where we can move. Because then in turn, like if we do something and it bites me in the ass, they'll come back and like point the finger, like, you know, so it's kind of a CYA as well. So I'm just like, hey coach, let's stay away from contact today, or let's stay away from full court. So getting that's a lot easier. And another thing that I've started to